The first time Chief Kale Veyron saw one of the creatures, he nearly fell out of his command chair. It was a scritch, small, gray, six-legged, with antennae that twitched like broken sensor wires. It scurried across his console at 0300 station time, paused to look directly at him with compound amber eyes, and then vanished into a vent panel before his hand could reach the emergency intercom. By morning, there were 11 reports. By the end of the cycle, there were 47. The Interstellar Transit Hub Vega 9 was one of the largest deep space stations in the Concorde Alliance, a marvel of engineering that processed over 200,000 passengers and 12,000 cargo manifests every standard week. It housed representatives of 19 species, ran on redundant power cores that could survive a small supernova, and had, until approximately 3 weeks ago, never once dealt with a pest infestation. The scritch had arrived in a grain shipment from the Delevan system. No one had caught them in customs, they were too small, too fast, and their biology confused the standard bioscanners. Now they were everywhere. In the food halls. In the wiring conduits. In the medical bay, which caused a near-diplomatic incident when a Yethran diplomat discovered one in his ceremonial robes. Chief Kale Veyron stood at the center of ops and stared at the infestation map like it had personally insulted his ancestors. Red dots covered the display. There were so many red dots. Fumigation, suggested Lieutenant Pra, a thin Salvari with nervous hands. Fumigation failed twice, Kale said flatly. The scritch have a redundant respiratory system. They simply go dormant when the chemical levels rise, then wake up when it disperses. We lost 3 million credits of product and 17 technicians had to be decontaminated. Next. Sonic deterrence? They communicate at the same frequency. It seemed to attract more of them. Targeted elimination drones? The scritch chew through copper wiring. The drones lasted 4 hours before they started losing navigation. 2 of them collided. One of them is now being lived in. Pra opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to suggest. That was when the human knocked on the door. Ethan Cross was not an impressive-looking man by most species standards. He was of medium height, medium build, with dark hair that was slightly too long for regulation and the kind of quiet, calculating eyes that missed very little. He was the station's senior systems engineer, officially responsible for structural integrity, atmospheric processing, and power routing. Unofficially, he was the person you called when something was wrong in a way that defied all known categories. He had been called. Chief Veyron, he said, stepping inside with a data tablet under one arm and a container under the other. The container had holes in the top. I've been looking at the infestation problem. Everyone has been looking at the infestation problem, Kale said. No one has been solving the infestation problem. I have a proposal. Ethan set his tablet on the table. Before I explain it, I need you to stay calm. Kale's eyes narrowed. In his experience, when someone told you to stay calm, you were approximately 3 seconds from losing your mind. Cross. The scritch are adaptive, fast-breeding, and chemically resistant, Ethan said, pulling up data with practiced efficiency. Every synthetic solution we've tried has either failed or made things worse. The reason is simple: we've been trying to fight biology with technology. That's backwards. He paused. We need to fight biology with biology. Kale stared at him. You want to introduce another organism to the station. Correct. Into an already destabilized ecosystem. Correct. That is, Kale searched for the right word. Insane. Hear me out. Ethan turned the data tablet around. On it was an image, a small 4-legged creature with pointed ears, retractable claws, forward-facing eyes, and an expression that could only be described as serene contempt. This is a Felis catus. Common name, cat. Earth origin. They've been in coevolutionary partnership with humans for approximately 10,000 years. Kale studied the image. The animal looked soft and implausibly small. That is supposed to eliminate our pest problem. That, Ethan said, lifting the lid of the container slightly so a pair of copper-bright eyes peered out from within, is going to end your pest problem. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Representatives from 4 species formally objected. The Yethrin delegate called it primitive biological improvisation. The Salvari Safety Board submitted a 14-page risk assessment in under 2 hours, which was impressive even by their standards. One Delevan merchant refused to set foot in any section of the station where the predatory quadruped was present and demanded a formal injunction. Chief Kale Veyron overruled all of them. Not because he was confident. He overruled them because the alternative was doing nothing, and doing nothing had a very clear projected outcome: total infestation of Vega 9's food storage within 11 days, with cascading systems failures to follow. For cats, he told Ethan, you have 1 week. If there is any incident involving other station personnel, we pull them immediately. Ethan nodded. He did not smile, but his eyes did something that was close enough. The cats went to work immediately. That was the thing no one had anticipated, not the alien administrators, not the safety board, not the 14 risk assessors who had spent 6 hours identifying theoretical threat vectors. They had all imagined the cats would need to be directed, trained, deployed in some coordinated fashion. They had imagined the whole thing would require management. The cats required no management. The first Scritch sighting in Corridor 7 was reported at 0615. By 0620, a lean tortoiseshell named Vesper had already stationed herself at the vent entrance, patient as stone, and was waiting. The Scritch, an animal that had survived fumigation, sonic bombardment, and drone strikes, came out of the vent at 0623 and was dealt with in approximately 0.4 seconds. By the end of the first day, infestation reports in Corridor 7 had dropped by 60%. Lieutenant Pra, who had been the most nervous about the whole arrangement, found herself watching the station's internal cameras with something she would later describe as reluctant fascination. The cats moved through the station like they owned it, which, by some deeply territorial feline logic, they apparently believed they did. They learned the ventilation system faster than most engineers. They coordinated, in their oblique and unhurried way, covering different sections at different hours. When one cat flushed Scritch from a wall panel, another was waiting on the far side. No one had taught them this. No one had briefed them. They simply knew. How? Pra asked Ethan on the 3rd day, watching Vesper disappear around a corner with something small and 6-legged in her mouth. 10,000 years of practice, he said simply. By the end of the week, the infestation map was mostly green. By the end of the 2nd week, Chief Kale Veyron stood in front of the display and counted 17 remaining red dots. 17, in a station that had once shown over 400. He stood there for a long time. Ethan stood beside him, holding a cup of coffee, saying nothing. The Yethrin delegate, Kale said at last, submitted a formal complaint this morning. He said, the gray one, what do you call her? Machi. Machi sat on his official documentation. Cats do that. He was quite upset. Also cats do that. Kale was quiet again. Then, slowly, something happened to the corners of his mouth that was, in its own reserved alien way, a smile. He also reported that Machi subsequently sat on his lap for 2 hours while he rewrote the documentation, and that he found the experience, he checked his notes, unexpectedly calming. Ethan took a sip of his coffee. Also cats do that. Kale turned to look at him. Your species domesticated these animals 10,000 years ago. Give or take. And then you brought them to space. We bring them everywhere. Why? Ethan thought about it, genuinely thought about it, the way he thought about hard engineering problems, turning the question over slowly. Because they work, he said finally. And because, he paused. Somewhere along the way, they stopped being tools. They became part of the crew. Kale looked back at the display. Green across almost every corridor. The 4 cats were logged on the system now: Vesper, Machi, a black one named Ajax, and a massive orange one the maintenance crew had taken to calling the Admiral, each with a small paw print icon beside their names. "Amend the station manifest," Kale said to Pra, who was standing at the far console trying not to look like she'd been listening to the whole conversation. "List them as essential personnel." Pra blinked. "Under what classification?" Kale Veyron, Chief Administrator of Interstellar Transit Hub Vega 9, considered the question with full diplomatic gravity. "Pest control specialists," he said. "Category: irreplaceable." 3 months later, the Concord Alliance formally requested that humanity share its biological pest remediation methodology with 11 other species. Ethan Cross wrote the documentation. Machi sat on it twice.